I'm Gwen. I will be reading an article entitled Anglo Indians as Portrayed in Cinema, written by Harry McClure, and it's taken from Anglos in the Wind, an issue of April 2022. I was 12 years old when my dad took me to watch Bhavani Junction, the timeless film directed by George Cukor. It was a morning show, I remember, at a cinema theatre called the Plaza in Tiruchirappalli, known simply as Trichy. This railway junction in the south of India was once teeming with Anglo-Indian railway families, especially in the suburb of Golden Rock, where the huge central workshop is situated. There were more than 6,000 employees working in various capacities, almost Anglo-Indians. So you can imagine the size of the sprawling Golden Rock railway colony that housed our folk. One could easily pick out Anglo-Indian homes by their trademark well-tended gardens and colorful bougainvillea leading over the wooden trellises. My dad was a railway mail driver. He worked on the steam locomotives and closer to retirement as a diesel engine driver. His name was Richard James McClure, but everybody knew him as Jimmy. He loved reading and was a great storyteller. Most of the stories he told us had supernatural elements in them. The way he told a story, however bizarre, no one could ever pick holes in it or dispute its authenticity. He also loved watching movies on his off days. Being the youngest of my siblings, I was lucky to got to accompany him to the cinema theater. Bhavani Junction, that was in 1956. In those days, Hollywood movies did their rounds in small Indian towns many years after their official release in America. That's why a film like Bhavani Junction, released in 1956, was screened in Trichy in the early 70s. I enjoyed watching even though I couldn't understand some parts because I was too young, I guess. However, I did identify with the Anglo-Indian railway family life depicted in the film. The railway colony, the crowded railway station, and yes, the love story. There was the first English movie I saw that had an Indian setting, Pakistan actually. They shot the Indian scenes in Lahore. The strikingly beautiful Ava Gardner played Victoria Jones, the Anglo-Indian young nurse, and the handsome Stuart Granger essayed the role of the British Army officer who falls in love with her. The film dealt with issues that later on in my adult life I could understand more clearly. The political background of India's march towards partition and struggle between the non-violent movement of Congress and non-violent and violent communists. Also, the story highlighted for me the fact that Anglo-Indians belonged to a mixed race community. I became aware of the question of identity for the first time in my life. Victoria, the central character, states it very clearly in a conflict-charged scene. We can't become English because we are half Indian. We can't become Indian because we are half English, she said. Chakrakari, that is Julie, was 1975. Another film that was centered around the Anglo-Indian characters from South India was called as Chatakari, which means Anglo-Indian girl in Malayalam. Directed by K.S. Sethumandahavan, it became a huge box office hit in 1974. The film was the Kerala State Film Award for Best Actress for Lakshmi, who played Julie Morris, the Anglo-Indian girl who falls in love with a Hindu boy. It also won the Filmfare Award for Best Feature Film in Malayalam. The Hindi remake entitled Julie became very popular in 1975, and the film was subsequently made in Telugu, Tamil, and Kannada. Something about Julie, the innocent Anglo-Indian character, must have touched a chord with film goers of those yesteryears. So what did Anglo-Indians think of Chatakari or Julie? Yes, it was the talking point for many within the community. And yes, remarks like, we don't talk like that, or we don't dress like that. We dance differently from those silly characters. These remarks did their rounds. They agreed the story smacked of vivid melodrama, but they also agreed that the tender love story and the melodious songs were great entertainment, especially from people from other communities who were treated as a glimpse of Chatakari up close and personal. Then we had 36 Charangi Lane, that was in 1981. Then in 1981 came an unexpected gem from Calcutta that went on to become an iconic film even though it did not fare well commercially. 36 Jorengi Lane was critically well received upon its release and over the years acquired a cult status. It won the National Film Award, India, for Best Feature Film in English. Jennifer Kapoor, née Kendall, the English actress who played the Anglo-Indian character, Violet Stoneham, was nominated as Best Actress for the BAFTA Film Awards. Directed by Aparna Sen, the film portrays the life of a lonely Anglo-Indian spinster in the bustling city of Calcutta. It tells the poignant story of how a naive woman is deceived by two young lovers who take advantage of her trusting nature. They use Violet's flat as a venue for their periodic trysts. In the meanwhile, most mainstream Indian directors continue to portray Anglo-Indian men as spineless wasters and the women as vamps and cabaret dancers. They were shown wearing stainless steel chains around their necks with the crucifix pendants. Cheesy efforts from film studios kept these lucrative stereotypes alive with total disregard to the Anglo-Indian community's immense contribution to our country's growth. These films were commercial vehicles that did great damage to the image of the small community. And all that the directors cared for was the constant sound of cash registers ringing at the box office. The Outhouse, 1998. Amid this viewing dross came this lovely indie film, The Outhouse, which first premiered at the International Film Festival of India, the IFFI, in Delhi in 1998. It was directed by Leslie Cavallo and was made on a tight budget. This English language film tells the story of a young Anglo-Indian woman, played sensitively by Priscilla Connor, and her middle-class family that moves from Kola gold fields to Bangalore, where they succumb to the pressures of big city life. The thought-provoking film was distributed by Hansa Pictures and was screened in Bangalore, Mangalore, Calcutta, and the Northeast, and also a bit in the state of Kerala. The Outhouse doesn't follow old-style art house film structure, yet one can appreciate its art behind every frame. The lucidity of its form and pacing has made it the director's emblematic work. Deservingly, this film won the national level Golapudi Srinivas Award in 1998 for Best First-Time Director in Indian Cinema. Cavallo won the prestigious Arivandan Purushakram Award for Kerala and for the Best Debuttant Director. The Outhouse was screened at the International Film Festival of Kerala. It also won the Best Indian Film at Damascus after the Indian Film Week in Syria. Cotton Mary, 1999. Cotton Mary, 1999. When Cotton Mary was released in 1999, it came under fire from Anglo-Indians. Directed by Ishmael Merchant and co-directed by Madhu Jaffrey, it is a period film set in 1954 South India. Mary was an Anglo-Indian nurse played by Madhur Jaffrey. She plays an English woman named Lily McIntosh who is unable to nurse her baby. In this heavy-handed melodrama, the title character, an Anglo-Indian, is portrayed as a scheming, insincere, condescending thief. She makes herself officious by organizing a wet nurse for the baby, thus gaining favor from her boss, and slowly starts to control the Macintosh household. Anglo-Indians in this film are shown as lazy, promiscuous, and obsessed with all things British. Mary's niece, Rosie, comes across as a tart who flirts even inside a church. Ismail Merchant stressed that he never wanted to portray Anglo-Indians in a bad light, but his film was unofficially withdrawn from circulations in some more movie theaters in India. Those who watched the film felt it was laced with elements of genre trash that made Anglo-Indians look like caricatures. Bo Barracks Forever, 2004. Anjan Dutt's Bo Barracks Forever, released in 2004, was centered around fictional Anglo-Indian characters who live in an old red-bricked Bo barracks in Calcutta. Even though the director managed to rope in some fine actors like Lilette Dubé, who plays Emily Lobo, and the troubled Anglo-Indian mother, Victor Banerjee, Neha Dubé, Munmun Sen, and others, the film's character lacked depth because of a lazy script. They come across as caricatured, dysfunctional people who trapeze around aimlessly without much care about their place of residence, which is about to be demolished by unscrupulous property developers. The film's intention of showcasing the film and times of lower middle class Anglo Indians living as troubled tenants goes awry. That tries his best to approach the story with a flourish of neorealism, but what we see is an imitation of Hollywood's hegemony over popular filmmaking. Anglo Indians and the setting are merely incidental in this film. Calcutta, I'm Sorry, 2022. My film, Calcutta, I'm Sorry, was written in 2018, shot in 2019, and completed in 2022. I wanted to tell a simple liner story from the perspective of a mature Anglo-Indian music teacher who lives in Kannur. Amanda Wright, the central character, is played by Priscilla Connor. When Amanda is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, that's MS, she is jolted out of her peaceful lifestyle. A powerful urge to hug her granddaughter, whom she had never met, overwhelms her. She makes up her mind to go to Chennai, where her estranged daughter lives. She decides to go by road on her trusty bicycle. For her, riding a long distance on a cycle was an unfulfilled dream until now. When she reaches Chennai and discovers that her granddaughter lives in Kolkata, she pushes herself to continue her journey on her cycle to West Bengal, where a rude shock awaits her. With unstinting support from Pran Amrit, our producer from the UK, and a dedicated cast and crew, I was able to make this film with total freedom from studio disciplines and restrictions. Also, not being straitjacketed by a film school education helped me. Many a times during the making of this film, I noticed I was running on instinct. All those countless numbers of movies I had watched during my younger days definitely helped to enhance my filmmaking sensibilities. In addition, my skills as a comic book illustrator gave me an edge when framing each and every scene. I'm grateful to Priscilla Connor, who came on board with a highly intelligent perception of Amanda Wright and the character she played so naturally. There was never a day that went by on set without Priscilla gently asking, "What would Amanda say on this line?" Or, "Can we have Amanda doing this instead?" She was spot on for the role. Priscilla lent credibility to the character because she is supremely fit for her age and very brave. She dismissed a stunt double and did all those risky shots of riding a bicycle on our dangerous Indian highways. The supporting cast were fantastic. All of them understood their roles and went beyond the script. Nicholas Moses, the young Anglo-Indian cinematographer, who also doubled as our editor, excelled in what he loves doing best, shooting a movie. A special mention needs to be made about Ganesh Nash Ramanna, the man behind the background music score and the wonderful song composition. His music gave life to all the scenes in the film. Calcutta, I'm sorry, has one big distinction. It is the first Indian film centered around Anglo Indian characters that is written and directed by an Anglo Indian. It is not a story about the Anglo Indian community per se, but it brings out the essence of being Anglo Indian and will surely touch anyone who loves a good human interest story. It is a road film and an emotional drama that can be summed up in a single simple line. One woman's quest for a hug. Back to Trichy, early 70s. My dad and I had a habit of discussing a movie after watching it. When we were walking back home from Plaza Cinema Theatre, we talked avidly about Bhavani Junction, dissecting the story and every scene. Animatedly, I remarked that Victoria should have married Patrick Taylor and the Anglo-Indian rail traffic superintendent in the end, and not the British Army officer. My dad stopped dead in his tracks looking at me and said, Victoria does pair up with Patrick in the book. With a proud glint in his eye, he added, You have a good story sense. Do you know that? When you grow up, you should make films. That should be your dream. And that time, I didn't know whether my dad was joking or was being serious with me. All I know now is that it took me a little more than 40 years to make a film. But I guess it's never too late to do your dream.